The way that you tell people really matters. And that's also where we screwed up here, because this leaked out a week ahead of when we were planning to announce it through some release notes that were vague. So people didn't really know what it was we were offering. Where I think if we'd have come out saying first, like, hey, here's the service, it's optional, it's $10 a month, people might say, don't use that service, right? Okay, but that's different than saying don't use Ledger, right? And so I think that's the part that we could have done much differently.
Welcome back to the NFT Now podcast. I'm Matt Medved, and today's guest is Ian Rodgers, Ledger's Chief Experience Officer. Ledger recently experienced a significant backlash around its Ledger Recover feature, a key recovery service that provides a backup of your seed phrase and allows you to restore your private keys. Ian was on the front lines of responding to this controversy and addressing users' concerns, and I'm looking forward to diving in deeper with him. Before we do, I want to encourage you to sign up for our weekly newsletter at nftnow.com/newsletter. Each week, we distill everything happening in the space into actionable insights straight to your inbox. Without any further ado, Ian Rodgers at Ledger. Ian, so happy to have you on the NFT Now podcast. How's it going, man?
Good. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I've been following your career, since my time in the music industry, and you've had, quite a journey to Ledger from Apple Music, LVMH. Maybe just give us a little bit of the brief backstory and what that journey was.
Sure. I mean, I'm 50, so it's not that brief anymore, but I studied computer science in the early 90s. That's usually where I start. I actually started programming computers when I was a kid, because of my stepdad. And, I was sort of like a computer kid from, say, 8 to 14, and then a skateboarder and a punk rocker from, 14 to 17 when my first daughter was born. And that kind of sums me up. I think if you know all those facts, then you kind of know, who I am and where I come from. From Indiana, and then ended up in Indiana University, like a broke kid with a kid trying to not live in a trailer park, and which is sort of where, if you have a kid in Goshen, Indiana at the age of 17, that's kind of where you're destined. So I wanted to try to escape that fate. So that's why I leaned back on this thing that I had from my childhood, which was, computer programming, oddly enough, and decided to do it as a major. I ended up, meeting up with this incredible head of the music library at Indiana University, who had this idea that all these records and tapes that were behind the desk were going to be on computers someday. And I was like, okay, I mean, if you're paying me $6.50 an hour, I'll build whatever app it is you're asking me to build. And so we built something that searched the school card catalog and would stream music, first from the RS-6000 that was under my desk to the next slab that was on top of my desk. And then they just kind of got further and further away. And it was sort of Groundhog Day for me for 20 years, going from, building that at Indiana University to, working with the Beastie Boys, which I did. I left grad school in 1995 to go on tour with the Beastie Boys. And that's what brought me to California. While I was on tour with the Beastie Boys, I met up with an old friend, Rob Lord, who had started the Internet Underground Music Archive in 1993 or 94, pre-web even. And he was like, hey, I'm helping this guy Justin Frankel with this thing called Winamp. Do you want to come help us? And I was the first employee at a company called Nullsoft that made Winamp that we sold to AOL in May of 99. And then we two of us, Rob and I, started a new company that was sort of like a web-based Winamp that we sold to Yahoo in 2003. When Dave Goldberg left Yahoo Music, I took over Yahoo Music after we built their music subscription service, which was 1 million songs, May of 2005, which is hilarious today when Apple Music has 100 million songs, but that's what it was in May of 2005. Yahoo Music Unlimited. Had a company called Topspin, which was, commercial failure, but, really like a spiritual success, I should say. And a lot of it carries on in Web3 today, because it was all about, having a direct connection between artists and their fans. So I didn't, again, the company was not a success, but I carry like a lot of the idealism from the company with me. Even at LVMH, it was probably like my most relevant background, even though the company was not successful, because, we were really building direct to consumer businesses, using the internet at LVMH. They already had direct to consumer businesses, but they needed to take on this online component. But then I, after like truly failing at Topspin as a CEO, I went and became the CEO of Beats Music. Jimmy Iovine was is one of these people that sees things in people, and I'm super lucky that he saw something in me. And we built Beats Music together with Jimmy and Luke Wood and Trent Reznor and Dr. Dre and Zane Lowe and a bunch of other really talented people. And I mean, could go on and on. Like, it's such a great team, to this day. Like, Julie Pilot, Scott Plagenhoff, Larry Jackson, like, so many like amazing people from there. Um, and then I got a call from this, big conglomerate called LVMH that I'd never heard of. It's owned by a family called the Arnauds that I hadn't heard of. But it's just because I was not my world. And when I did my research, I was super excited actually because personally, I was done with the music business if I could be. I didn't think I'd ever find my way out. Once you get kind of pigeonholed like that, you can be hard to make a move up at least. Also, I was pretty happy to get out of California and out of America, but I didn't know how to do that and have a career move. But even more than that, I saw this big opportunity with LVMH, which was, my belief is that the internet moves us from mass culture to niche culture. And when I looked at LVMH, I saw a collection of very valuable niches. And I think it's, there's something incredibly relevant to Web3. If you listen to the podcast that Derek Edwards Lawson I did, I was extrapolating his version of, he talks about everything is about attention generation and value capture. And I think that actually describes LVMH very well. I think what I've come to realize is that Drake, Louis Vuitton, Damien Hirst, and Beeple are all in the same business, the business of attention creation and value capture. And then it's a question of just how do you do it? Louis Vuitton's value capture is much more efficient than Drake's. Spotify is an incredibly inefficient way to capture value. Touring, you can make real money, but talk about inefficient. You got to drag your human carcass, around the world 300 days a year, and that's super expensive. So yeah, there's money in it, but if you talk to a lot of artists, there's something enjoyable about touring, but there's something enjoyable about staying home with your family too. So there's that's the obligation of touring is not always what an artist wants. And then if you look at if you just take the number of customers of Drake, Louis Vuitton and Beeple, and put the number of put the amount of revenue over the number of customers, you could see that Beeple, his value capture is probably much more efficient than Louis Vuitton, right? So, to me, that's kind of the thing that I saw and can't unsee. Now, to end the story and bring us all the way to to current day, when I moved here to Paris, two of the first people I met were Tony Fadell, who was the inventor of the iPod and co-inventor of iPhone and founder of Nest, et cetera. And then Pascal Gauthier, who was the first seed investor in Ledger, and then the president, and then the CEO. And we just, we were just friends, the three of us. But we're also geeks and music fans and skiers and all these other things. So we spend a lot of time together. And I really like got to know Ledger through that way, like through Pascal, just socially, meeting Nico Baca and Eric Lachevêque, and seeing that these guys are true geniuses, but they were also like they had their finger on the source to me. I think I lived through this internet transformation, and I think about the late '90s when it was AOL versus Microsoft, and Microsoft versus Netscape. And I think about Cisco sitting on the sidelines just laughing and saying, we don't care who wins. I feel the same way about Ledger. I think it's very difficult to call the future of cryptocurrency, but it's very easy to say that human beings will have digital value in their lives in the future. Therefore, security will be super important, much more important than it is today. Security will be important in a way that the devices that are in our hands and on our desks do not address, period, and are incapable of addressing in their current architectural form. And self-custody will be a thing. I'm an American. Having money in your safe is a right. And that is a right worth fighting for. And when you think about, putting your right to put gold bars in your personal safe, you land on self custody. But then you think about the utility that brings. If I have my passport in my safe, and my safe is a digital safe, which is also connected, that immediately has not only more security than carrying my passport around in my backpack, but also more utility. Because when I go to show my passport when I check into the hotel, they only need certain information from me. They don't need to see all of the stamps in my book. They are not an immigration officer. They don't need to see my age necessarily. They might need to know, I can federate to them only the information that they actually need. So I think that the concept of a digital safe in a world of digital assets, digital identity, a world of AI where we need human provability and digital scarcity is just sort of a foregone conclusion. And I think that Ledger is really like kind of right in the eye of the storm, and that's what's exciting. That's what's exciting to me.
I love it. I love it. Quite a lot to unpack there, and we'll get into it as we go. Just an impressive journey for sure. And clearly, being on top of what's next. Speaking of being in the eye of the storm, Ledger obviously got a lot of attention, both negative and positive, around Ledger Recover. In recent weeks. Let's talk through that. First off, like, what is Ledger Recover? How does it work? And what was the rationale behind it?
Sure. So Ledger Recover is something that we've been talking about for 2.5 years. I actually found it in a blog post I wrote back in January of 2021 that we were talking about seed phrase backup and recovery. From our perspective, you zoom out, and where there are, depending on whose numbers you believe, but there are 400 to 450 million people in the world of crypto today, and fewer than 10 million of them use hardware wallets. So that means that most of them are either on exchanges, which is not crypto. If not self custody, why crypto? Seriously, sincerely. Or they're on insecure software wallets, which is just straight up dangerous, right? So our question is, how do we close that gap? If there's 450 million people in the world of crypto, and fewer than 10 million have hardware wallets, okay, that's a huge gap to close. I mean, we all talk about the next 100 million people coming into crypto, but even if you just look at the existing crypto audience, there's a gigantic gap to close. I think there are two major usability problems. One of them is onboarding. Like, getting up and running is a bit of a heavy load. It's not only like it takes some time, and actually I think it takes less time than people really think, but the cognitive load is pretty big, right? Like, just trying to get your head around, what is this thing? It's a wallet. Okay, so my money's in it. What happens if I lose it? Like, people don't, which is also they that's what I mean when I say cognitive load. There's like a mental model that it takes some time to get your head around. And, I think of this as, my mom in the 90s didn't understand sort of the basics of client server architecture, but now she does. Like, if she can't send her email, like, my mom knows the basics of, like, okay, well, wait, am I on the Wi-Fi? What's the error I'm getting? She knows that she's connecting to a server, the data's coming back to the server. Does she understand it? No, but she has the mental model. That's what I mean. And I think the mental model of digital assets is still really, and we found this out in a big way with the Recover thing. They really, it's a bit of magic to them, and they don't actually understand deeply how it works. We should take some blame for that, I think. But definitely onboarding is one of the tricky things. If I always say, like, if you're not a little freaked out about the question of what should I do with my 24 words, then you don't really understand what those 24 words represent and what the power of them is, because you do need to think about, well, how am I writing them down? Where am I writing them down? I mean, if you're screenshotting them or sending them to yourself in an email or putting them in your, digital notes, like, then you definitely don't understand how they work and how security works and what it is you're doing. But you need to think about your operational security, and okay, well, how many assets or how much access am I putting on this device versus that device, and do I have things segregated between a Mint wallet and a bag wallet, or however you want to manage your own OPSEC. But I mean, that's my point, is it does take some thought and some understanding to get to that point. So that onboarding is one big thing. The other, I think, big hurdle is connectivity. I feel like every day I'm struggling to connect to Web3 in some way, right? And if I'm struggling, I can't imagine what someone who isn't living and breathing this stuff all day, what experience they have. So I think those are, two things that we really as a community need to solve. For us with Ledger Recover, the idea is that we give you a backup of your recovery phrase, and we give you some protection, right? There are a lot of people that would never do this because that protection comes with identifying yourself with government ID. But if you think about the 90+% of people who hold crypto, they hold less than $50,000. They aren't hiding their assets from anyone because they're already on an exchange where they have KYC'd, right? Let's go to the majority of people who are on an exchange. They have KYC'd. They aren't hiding their assets from anyone, and they have less than $50,000. Think about that person. That's the person to think about when you think about Ledger Recover. Getting that person into self custody, and giving them some coverage and peace of mind in the case that they lose their seed phrase. That's what the product is all about. That's what Ledger Recover is, a way to give people an easy onboarding, a backup of their recovery phrase, and peace of mind. Now, the way it works is it takes your private key, encrypts it, shards it, puts it with 3 different custodians. You identify yourself using a process which isn't KYC, but it is an identification using your government ID. And then should you need to recover, you go through 2 KYC steps. The encrypted shards are sent back to your Nano and reconstructed there. And then, in the case that something, goes wrong, subject to investigation, et cetera, there is up to $50,000 of coverage. So if your twin, manages to get your seed phrase onto their Nano, they manage to log into your account, they manage to fake it that they're you, they manage to get it, into a device, et cetera, et cetera. There is, there is some coverage for you, but obviously, especially for that much value, that's a relatively unlikely scenario. So that's what the product is. The trouble that we got into with it, I think, was twofold. One, I think we really underestimated people's response, and I apologize for that. I think that I think that had it been released differently, and I take this blame as well, then I think we could have avoided a lot of the misunderstanding that we had. I would have loved to have had an argument about the merits of the product rather than the merits of Ledger. That would have been, I was prepared for the debate about, is this a product I should use or not? Right. Because again, I think there's a certain user that it's for, and there's a certain user that it's not for. So I was prepared for that debate. I wasn't really prepared for the debate that we ended up having, which is there were, and I think this is where we really were a bit surprised that the main question was people asking, wait, how is this even possible? Because then you go, well, I mean, if you sign transactions, your hardware wallet has your private key. That's actually what a hardware wallet does, is it protects your private key, and it, the operating system enforces that if your private key is accessed, you confirm that access on a secure screen with buttons which are, directly connected to a secure element. But it does use your private key to sign those transactions. It has to. We come back to our music business life, Matt. It's like there were lots of people that wanted digital rights management, in the 90s and 2000s, and the joke is like the only way to to really protect music so people can't bootleg it is to make it so no one can hear it, right? And well, obviously that wasn't a real solution, but the way that a wallet works, not just a ledger, not just a hardware wallet, but a wallet. The way that a wallet works is it takes your private key and it uses it to sign a transaction, right? Or to do whatever it is it needs to do. And I think that, if there's a silver lining, it's that, if someone understands how that works, they actually understand why Ledger better, right? Because, you go, okay, wow, I must have access to my private key to sign a transaction. So where do I want that to be? I could either be on an exchange where I don't have one at all. I just have an account and I let someone else worry about the back end. And, again, now you have challenges with do I really have any crypto? You have the FTX problem, right? Or am I just a spreadsheet in an account like Quadriga or FTX or something like that? So that's that challenge. Or am I in a software wallet where my private key might be available to any app running in my web browser? Okay, that's scary. Am I in a piece of software on my phone where if my phone gets rooted, anyone could have access to my private key? That's another option. Is it in a secure enclave and then it comes out of the secure enclave anytime an operation is done, and then I'm at a risk of being rooted? Or do I want to be in a hardware wallet which has an open source chip which isn't secure? That's another option. Or do I want to be in a hardware wallet like Ledger, which has a secure element and a purpose-built operating system, which is always connected to a secure screen and buttons connected directly to a secure element, and the operating system enforces that I am prompted on that secure screen to push with those buttons, which are connected to the secure element, anytime my private key is accessed. So that's really your decision tree as to where to keep. So I think that look, as people understand more about this, it's the fundamentals here are quite good. And then actually, where we were pushed to by the community, I think we were very happy to be pushed to, frankly, because one of the criticisms that people have with Ledger is that it is not 100% open source. It is majority open source. We would like to open source as much as is actually possible, and to be honest, almost everything is possible with the exception of the secure element. We do have more that could be open sourced, which isn't, such as the dashboard that you use to navigate your ledger could and should, in our opinion, be open sourced. We just haven't done it yet because, like every company, we have 20 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, and we like trying to get through the stuff that's on top. Prioritization is the name of a game at any startup, no matter how big you are. And so we hadn't open sourced that yet. And really, with the response we saw from the community, we said, look, you're right. We're actually happy to show you the code. Like if that's what will make you feel makes us feel more comfortable too. Like our motto is don't trust, verify. So let us give you the ability to verify. So really, I think we're overall really thankful that well, first of all, thankful that people give a shit. That's like we had announced this in a Wired article 2 weeks earlier, and no one noticed. Like we got nothing, no response. So on one level, like people hearing from people that they care was I mean, difficult because they told us in bad words, but still good for the people care. And second, the thing that people were ultimately asking for, which is more transparency, we agree with. So we're happy to meet the audience there. So that is where we've ended up. We have the white paper on that coming really soon. We actually already have a version of it that we're circulating with with some security experts in our industry overall. So we'll publish that soon after we get some initial feedback back from that first round of security experts. And then we will keep going and open source, and we won't launch the product until it's all out there, until the code is and I guess open source isn't quite the right word, but the code is transparent and reviewable.
No, it makes total sense. It's a great walkthrough through it. It's really interesting. I think in some ways this also really illustrates kind of like the challenges of communicating like new features, complex concepts, things like this in this like very like hot button, rapid response climate. Like you said, this was, laid out in a Wired article, nobody noticed. But, once this blew up on Twitter, the backlash was pretty swift and pretty harsh, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
Some like really respected devs in the space, like Fubar, like straight up saying like, stop using Ledger hardware wallets and things like that. And so I'm curious, like, how do you think about like that challenge of like communicating these concepts within like this uniquely like fast-paced, rapid response 24/7 space?
It's really a great question, and I think that it's something I would do this completely differently. I think it's also timing matters. Like I said, I mean, we've been talking about, I think part of the reason that we hadn't anticipated this is because we have been talking about it publicly for so long, and we've only had kind of universally good feedback on it. People are like, in a way, the response that people have always given us is like, oh yeah, that'll bring a lot of people to self custody who aren't in self custody yet. That was kind of like universally what we'd heard from, lots of people in the space. So I think that, to your point, then the way that you tell people really matters. And that's also where we screwed up here, because this leaked out a week ahead of when we were planning to announce it through some release notes that were vague. So people didn't really know what it was we were offering. And people jumped to conclusions, and then we were on our back foot trying to explain what it was. Where I think if we'd have come out saying first, like, hey, here's the service, it's optional, it's $10 a month, there we could have at least, people might say, don't use that service, right? Okay, but that's different than saying don't use Ledger, right? And so I think that's the part that we could have done much differently. I think that, also we probably, there was definitely a way to do this. Another way to look at this is that there's actually two separate markets, right? There is a market of people who know us and know our product very well and for a long time, and they live on Reddit and on Twitter and and then there are new people coming into the space. I think part of the lesson here for Ariel and me is it's really impossible to talk to both groups at once. Like there's almost nothing there's no way of saying something that will resonate with both groups, because if you're talking to that Reddit and Twitter group, they have a certain expectation and a certain level of knowledge. And then if you're talking to, an artist who came into the space yesterday, they have a completely different context, that's the kind of person that's like, oh my God, thank you for Ledger Recover. And, there is certainly a class of Ledger users that would say, I will never give my government ID to anyone online, right? And by the way, like, you can use Ledger Live today to buy crypto. And, depending on where you live and who you buy from, you are going to need to register with that partner. I bought, Bitcoin and Ethereum today during Ledger, buy day, through Coinify. And I Coinify, I had to KYC once upon a time with Coinify. I have an account with them. Ledger has none of that data. I do use Ledger Live to do it. When Coinify gives me my crypto, they put it directly into my, into my wallet, into my Ledger wallet. But that is, again, it's my choice to use a service like that. If I wanted to, get my crypto a different way outside of Ledger Live, I'm, certainly welcome to do that. And that's like a fundamental belief of Ledger as well, is that, participating in anything at all ever is your choice. It is a choiceful environment that we push for.
Yeah, that's a super interesting way to kind of break down those segments as you think about it. Like, I even think about my own experience. I first bought Bitcoin in 2013, and was very much in that like school of like healthy paranoia, like not your keys, not your coins, like that whole era. But the only reason I didn't let lose the Bitcoin I bought was because I was fortunate that my mother throws nothing away and had somehow kept a folder with a piece of paper where I had written my seed phrase like 4 years later. And like, that's not a realistic solution for the majority of people. Right.
That's, luck as OPSEC is a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because as someone, with NFT Now, our mission is, like really to empower creators and also to see this technology go mainstream. And so understanding the latter part means like planning for like you said, like, retail or, the mainstream, like typical users who are not going to go through all of these kind of crazy convoluted like OPSEC steps. And so like, it's interesting because, during the debate, I understood the argument of, kind of like the crypto purists who were like, this is a new, like, or at least they saw it as a potential new attack vector, things like that, while also understanding that like, yes, but this is also a service that we're going to need to offer to really take this to where it needs to go.
Yeah, I think that, and the other thing for Ledger, it's also the great, Ledgers are almost 10 years old at this point. And so it's not their first rodeo like this one either. And like when they added Ethereum support in 2016, people lost their minds. Like, what are you doing? How can you have multiple apps running on this device? Someone stood up during Pascal's presentation at Bitcoin Miami and said, when are you making a Bitcoin only wallet, which, okay, I mean, I could put a Bitcoin only wallet in a box for you and sell it to you, but it's also not a real attack vector. If you listen to Nico Baca, who is a certified genius, talk about why he's proud of what he has built with Ledger, it's because we have the only programmable, like user programmable smart card platform on the planet. And that's incredible and really, really, really powerful, for that to exist. Another way to think about it, and if you care about freedom at a very at a very high level, which I think a lot of us in this space do, what Ledger does fundamentally is it uses the same secure element that has been battle tested for 40 years in things like credit cards and passports, and where the credit card protects the secret of the bank and the passport protects the secret of the government. Ledger protects the secret of the customer and of the user, and it has a development platform where you can build any application on that development platform, to interact with user secrets in a very secure way. So that's like the sort of the level of abstraction that we think about the platform at, and this is also why, but I understand, like, not everyone has the same mission. So when Ethereum was introduced to Ledger in 2016, people lost their minds. When Bluetooth was introduced to Ledger, people saw it as another attack vector. It's not, and you can read endless security things on why it on why it isn't. And by the way, you can buy a Nano S and not have that attack vector. But the reality is that having access to your private key is not an additional attack vector. Like, that's the thing that it's hard to get people to understand, because they didn't understand how it worked to begin with. But your wallet has access to your private key. That's how it signs transactions. Okay. So once you get beyond that, now you can think about, how it really works. But I'm totally empathetic. It shouldn't be on every user to understand that. But also, I'm in the same boat as you, where I'm talking to I had a board meeting with Dr. Martens last week, and I talked to them about what Nike is doing with Dot Swoosh. Well, you and I will be in Portugal next week, meeting with artists and talking to them about how important it is that they think about the security of where their contracts, are protected. I'm having, I'm having dinner tonight with a couple of with a couple of folks from the NFT community. One being Betty from Dead Fellas, the other being Benoit from Artifact. I don't think they mind if I said that we were having dinner together tonight. But like, thinking about their security is literally the security of their communities, right? And so, and they have a lot of people in their communities who have one NFT, and that's we need to care for those people too. So that's the challenge. But I think, like we said, the lesson is that we really need to have a different communication plan, for each of those audiences. One of my fundamental beliefs, like I said at the top, is that we don't have a mass culture. We haven't for a long time. Nike talks to skateboarders differently than they talk to footballers, right? That makes sense. And we need to talk to all of our different communities differently. We're not an infinite number of people, so that's not always practical, but that's what's kind of required, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in Paris last year when you unveiled the Ledger stacks at the Ledger conference. Obviously, that's a big strategic priority for the company going forward. I'm curious, like, tell us a bit about that, and how does that play into your vision or Ledger's vision for the future of Web3 security?
So stacks. Here it is. This is these little magnetic folios that we've created that are really fun. But stacks. So stacks is the same architecture as the Nano X. It was designed by Tony Fadell, who was the inventor of the iPod I mentioned earlier. It's the world's first curved e-ink touchscreen, and the curve in the e-ink is what's taking us more time than we hoped to get it to market. Here, I'll unlock it so you can see what the app stack looks like. Um, you can see one here. Boom. You can see that I've got my apps here. But the thought on this really came from Tony. I did a podcast with Tony that I definitely recommend people listen to. It's on the Ledger podcast, And what Tony described is, look, if we're, again, when Tony's point of view was, I told him that I was, going to look after the consumer business at Ledger. And he said, Ian, there is no consumer business. This is, you've got to create one. This is not yet a consumer business. You have to have a consumer device before you have a consumer business. His point of view is that, Ledger Nanos are kind of like the MP3 players before the iPod. And we needed to kind of get to that iPod level. So he wanted one that A, sort of signified value. So that's why it's the size of a credit card, right? Um, B, his question was, what does the future fat stack of cash look like? So he designed them with these curved screens so that you could read the spine if you stacked them together, and they're magnetic, so they stack up like magnetiles, which also gives you a whole bunch of different things, like I said, with these little folios, where I sort of, they just magnet right into the folio, and then magnet closed, and you can even stick them on top of each other with inside the folios, etc. Um, and also with a beautiful display, because another thing that our users have a challenge with is, if you've got multiple, which a lot of our users do, how do you tell one from the other? And and you might want to have one for a particular asset, or segregate them in whatever way you want, put a picture of your punk or your dog or your or whatever you want on it. So that was the idea, is to build like a true kind of consumer device, something that you can imagine not only selling at Best Buy, but selling at Target. Our belief is that, literally everyone will have digital assets, and everyone will need more security than is in their phone. It's not just about having a bag of Bitcoin, but ultimately it will be your two-factor authentication for all kinds of things. One will hold your passport, et cetera. So, it's also like we see a world where, carrying around a ledger doesn't say like, I've got Bitcoin. It just says, it might be like, I securely log into Instagram. We see a world where, secure devices are a device which is more secure than your phone is a necessity for pretty much everyone. So Stacks, is a step toward that. I think, really you can look at Stacks and Recover. And I think, again, the second silver lining in the Recover, swirl that we went through is, really standing up and saying, guys, we are thinking about the next 100 million people to come into this space. Everything that we're doing right now is getting ready for the next bull run. I think everyone in this space wants more people, to appreciate these assets. So how do we do that? Well, I think one is having a very consumer friendly device. Two is being able to use that device for all kinds of things. And like, that's why we built Ledger Extension, and we're trying to, we spent, an hour today with the team I did, talking about connectivity and how do we get from where Ledger Extension is today, to it really being easy to connect to absolutely anything using a combination of your Ledger Nano and Ledger Live. Ultimately, there isn't a better way to do it. Ultimately you need self-custody, you need hardware security, and you need clear signing. These are three things you need. This is not optional. And so, we have to get all the way there. And we want to get all the way there, making it easy to onboard, and both Stacks and Recover are a part of that, and super enjoyable to use. And that's what Ledger Stacks is all about. So that's what it is and how we're doing. And then, we're really, like, as I said, I just got back from Taipei this morning, because we're, getting these screens to market is proving to be quite difficult. We're very, very, very close. But no one has ever made a screen like this in a consumer device. First one ever. And I can promise you, because we're working super close with the suppliers, trying to get them, at a very high yield and a very high quality. And we're like very, very, very close, and we'll be, we'll have a good quantity of these between now and the end of the year. And then, next year we should have, as many as people want and need.
Very cool. Very cool. I'd love to also get your thoughts on like the ERC 4337 standard. I remember when that kind of came to light, it seems like that has the potential to potentially simplify use of wallets and also store private keys on a smartphone's like security module. I'm curious, like, how are you thinking about that, and how does that potentially impact Ledger's business?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think account abstraction is a real boon for hardware wallets down the road, because now you've got this scenario where you can kind of just add security, right? You can go from having a software wallet to, having another factor. And as a consumer, you'll be able to program, what you can do with what. And you would be crazy not to set those rules with a hardware wallet. Right. So another way to say it is, I picture a world which is like the world we live in now, which is quite heterogeneous, right? Like if I open my wallet, I have a bunch of different kind of ways of identifying myself, ways of paying for things, and they have different rules around them, right? I have metro tickets, which can do exactly one thing, just get me on the subway here in Paris. I have, an ATM card where I can get 300 euros out of that ATM and 500 out of that one. I have a credit card with a higher limit, and also, a specific rewards program built around it. So in other words, and I've got a checking account and a savings account and a brokerage account and a little bit of cash. And so this like super heterogeneous identity and value world. I think we'll have that, that same thing just with digital value. Right. And you'll be able to set all kinds of rules around that. And those rules will be user defined and user generated. And there will be certain things which you will protect with hardware, something like, for example, a huge sum of value, or the rules themselves. By the way, like to set those rules with a software wallet would be not wise. And then there will be other things where you'll set like a daily limit, or whatever limit you'd like, frankly, white lists, or whatever. So I think that account abstraction is going to be an incredible thing for usability. I think it's going to take some time, before it's really something that the average person is using. But I think it's a bit of a promised land. And I think that secure hardware has a super important role to play there. It's really important that people realize there is no software that will make your insecure hardware secure. Like that, you need to get that idea out of your head. And the thing that you really also need to realize is, if you don't have a secure screen, you do not have security, period. Right. And so that just takes so many things off the table. Right. So, again, in a podcast with Charles Guillemet, our CTO, that's on the Ledger podcast. It's from December. It's one of my favorite ones we've ever done, because I really feel like he does a great job of explaining, why, what is it that, what are you really worried about? Right. And I always say, like, when I talk about it, it sounds like marketing. And when Charles talks about it, it sounds like physics. That's why it's great to listen to it from Charles and not from me. But he goes through three things that you need to have security. One, you have to have your private key in a secure place, right? So, second, the operation on that private key needs to happen in a secure place, right? So, in the case of Ledger, it's in the secure element, and when you do the operation, it stays there. In the case of a secure enclave on your phone, it might be in the secure enclave, but the moment you do the operation, it comes out of the secure enclave, and is now not in a secure place. And if in the case of a software wallet, that doesn't do any of that, it's none of the above, right? And in the case of a exchange, it's not even yours. You're just believing somebody that they're going to keep some money for you when you want it, or some value for you when you want it. The third thing is, when you sign a transaction, so they call it endpoint security. At those endpoints, you have to know that what you see is what you sign. And with layers of operating system, between you and the screen, you really cannot know that on your computer or your phone. There are man-in-the-middle attacks that are just like phishing attacks, but more sophisticated. That are possible, especially if you're targeted. So that's the why. But it also could be the case that I mean, look, you can also, if you have $20 in your wallet, you know, there's no security on that. That's fine. It's not the end of the world if you lose it. I think the other thing that I always remind people, especially in the NFT space, is there's some of this is like, it's not all just about monetary value. And I think this is the thing people, I mean, everyone, and people in the space and people who don't understand the space miss this one. They think that the whole world of crypto is just about money and get rich quick. And I don't see it that way at all. When my mom was born, there was not that much plastic in the world. Now there's a lot of plastic in the world. It's hard to imagine a world without plastic. Right? When we were born, there was no digital stuff in the world. I think when we're our parents' age, there's going to be a lot of digital stuff. And just like plastic stuff, probably most of it won't be valuable, but it will be useful in some way in our lives, or it will have been once useful, or maybe it'll just be garbage, like a lot of plastic toys and garbage that you see everywhere, right? But I think that it is a new class of stuff, and that stuff will need different levels of security depending on its overall value. And some of that value will be sentimental. Like I always use the example, like, in the 90s, if you smashed my car window and stole my CD wallet, it's not like I couldn't pay the rent anymore. You didn't take my life savings, but I'm super bummed. I'm like, man, I spent years. I love those records. Like, you really take them from me? Damn. Right. And that's how I'd feel if you took my Tezos wallet. Would it be like a grip of cash and, oh my God, there goes the college fund?
It's a
No,
sentimental.
but like those are a bunch of like artists that I love and I have relationships with, and I collected those over days and years and months of like looking and collecting, and like, the value is not necessarily monetary. So anyway, I think that that's another thing to try to get right. I think in some ways this is about digital stuff more than it's about digital assets.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that perspective. If you had to kind of like boil it down, as we said, like people in the space have short attention spans. There's not a, it's sometimes there's a lot of like complicated, steps here. Like if you had to boil it down to like 3 to 5, like super quick, like steps, like what would your like tips for maximizing the security of your digital assets be?
I think that, the what I would do is, I mean, look, this is personal for everyone, so I don't want to give like a blanket response because people have different needs. What I always recommend is, have a ledger, have a backup of your ledger. It's just practical, right? So let's say, let's say you're going to start, doing what I would definitely recommend is dollar cost averaging into whatever assets that you believe in. So if you're buying Bitcoin and Ethereum every week, put that value on a ledger. Find a way to dollar cost average, use something like Stack and Sats, and dollar cost average on and I'm going by data here, weekly basis. Dollar cost averaging has paid off over time, right? Just like I wish I would have bought the S&P 500, every week or every month since I was 19 years old. That would have been a good move, right? Similarly, if you look back over the course of crypto, if you dollar cost average, you're still doing well. So, and put that on a ledger. Have a backup of that ledger, because let's say something happens, your dog eats it, you run it through the washing machine, whatever, you just grab the other one off the shelf, and who cares, right? In other words, you can buy a $150 Nano X as your main device and have a backup that's a Nano S Plus for $80, and then boom, you've got the best security in the world and a backup of the best security if in case you lose or break the one of the two devices. The other thing that I think is good practice is to have a mint wallet, right? So never, ever, 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 ever blind sign with your bag wallet, with your vault, your bag, whatever you call it, with your main wallet. Never blind sign. It's like literally like, hey, this guy on the street, hey, will you sign this contract? Oh, sure, let me sign it. That's not a good idea. Now, if you have a mint wallet where your exposure is less, you can be more promiscuous. That's a really good idea. Separate things into kind of a mint wallet and a vault wallet. And also I would have a backup of that for the same reason. Oh my God, big mint, I want to do it today, and for some reason I can't find my device, or again, my dog ate it, I ran it through the washing machine, whatever the hell. It's just smart to have a backup. And then, those are what you connect to, whether it's Brave or Ledger Live or MetaMask or Phantom or Temple or whatever, Rainbow or whatever wallet you're using. You can use all of those with your Ledger. Um, Ledger Live should do, with Wallet Connect, should do most of what you need it to do. And we have Ledger extension in Safari now, and it'll be in Chrome soon. So we're really trying to kind of build that end-to-end experience for you. But that I think is the basics. And then I think the thing that we all need to move to now is less blind signing. So what we're doing is building plugins for sites where you can, basically decode the smart contract on your Nano, and you can see exactly what it is you're signing, even if it's a smart contract. So instead of seeing blind signing with a big exclamation point, you see, here's exactly the operation that you're presenting. And that's another good use of ledger stacks, is when you have more screen real estate to be able to see more clearly what it is you're signing. And we've built some features that work well for this inside of ledger extension as well, where we do some kind of basically upfront sort of spam checking, and then we also do a wallet impact simulation before you sign, so you can see what it is, exactly what it is. First of all, if something looks off, we throw a flag. And secondly, you should be able to look at it and go, okay, when I sign this, I see what is going to actually happen in my wallet. I'm going to be down zero 0.2 ETH and I'm going to be up 1 NFT. Great. That is my expectation. And then you can say go. So that to me is like, you want to be sure you protect yourself. The other thing that is just like good hygiene, it's worth mentioning, is go to revoke.cash. Make sure you don't have any, allowances on your wallet that you don't intend. I went to revoke.cash yesterday and didn't have anything major, but there were a couple things where I'd done some burns where I wanted to, I wanted to take the allowance off the collection. I got that done on my Mint wallet. Just reduces your exposure, to potential phishing attacks.
Great. No, super, super helpful. Well, what's next for Ledger? I know that you just rolled out ENS support. I know that you have a lot in the works on the art side. Just give us a glimpse. We love the alpha. If there's anything you can reveal that you haven't said yet, always all ears.
Cool. Well, so I don't think I have anything that we haven't revealed yet. I mean, if I'd been standing here 2 weeks ago, I would, but today I don't think I do, because, the way that we look at the business is we have this core business, and the core business is we make hardware. We have the companion to that hardware, which is Ledger Live and Ledger Extension, and we have the dev platform. So I think maybe one bit of alpha is we really are investing heavily in the dev platform side. Right now we feel like we have the ability to develop on Ledger, but there's a lot more we could do to make that, reach more people, more fun to develop with, easier to develop with, et cetera. So that's a big piece for us. Another big piece, I guess, which is, what I just said, is getting that full loop with your Ledger Live, Ledger Extension, and clear signing all really humming. Like I feel like that's a piece that we've started, but we haven't finished. And right now we have Ledger Extension, but it's Safari only. So that coming to Chromium will be a big thing for us. And then having more plugins for clear signing across the ecosystem, art blocks, OpenSea, et cetera, so that you should never see blind signing, right? Or for 80 to 90% of the things you do with your wallet, you shouldn't see blind signing. So that's another big piece of it. And then we have the hardware roadmap. So, nano stacks, we're already working on devices that come after stacks. And then we're trying to build these businesses on top. So one big one is Ledger Enterprise. I think Ledger Enterprise is probably the best kept secret in the industry. Anyone who is not an individual, but is an organization, really needs not only security, but also governance. And so Ledger Enterprise adds that governance layer for people. And then we have our transactions and services business. So you can buy, sell, swap, stake, lend. There's a Ledger credit card, that whole kind of financial services. It's all done with partners, so, we just try to work with partners to make the user experience really good. So you can buy, you can trade. Staking is something that we're actually building more in-house. So that's great. You can stake with Kiln, you can stake, with others, but also we have our own, our own, staking system, so people can, we're trying to do it the best way possible by chain is the best way to put it. So it really depends. But, earning yield through self-custody is important. So that's another big one for us. And then there's Ledger Recover, which is, which will be our seed phrase backup and recovery service. That'll cost, like $10 a month. And again, there's definitely a class of users that are going to want that service.
Cool. Well, our final segment is a quick rapid fire round. It's called bullish or bearish, just to get your take on a few things. To start it off, obviously with your background in the music industry, I'd love to hear bullish or bearish music NFTs.
I would say bearish, and the music NFT folks know but it's not that I'm bearish on music NFTs. It's that I don't think that these boundaries between music, fashion, art matter in a digital world. I think that artists are artists, and great artists transcend these lines. So I think that there will be great music NFTs, and I collect as many of them as I can. I love, Zero X Music. I'm a complete set holder of Zero X Music. Look at gallery.so/ENCR, and you can see, my music photography collection. I buy, when I see generative art that includes music, I go toward it. So it's not that I'm bearish on, music and NFTs. It's that I don't think that you or I are going to make the next SoundCloud, based on this. I do think that, having collectibles on a Bandcamp page would be incredible. I would buy that, if I had a chance to buy the vinyl or buy the digital collectible on a Bandcamp page. There's a lot of artists that I would do that for in a heartbeat. So I think that there's some really great stuff there, but I think the truly great stuff is going to look more like an art gallery. I'm not sure how it matters if it's, generative art or generative music art or music, that I think that those are definitions that have been set by distribution in the past, right? If it's a round plastic disc with 72 minutes of music, then it goes in the music store. And if it hangs on a coat hanger, then it goes in the fashion store. And if it hangs on an art gallery wall, then it's art. I think that, and like great artists have always wanted to tear those boundaries down. And I think that digital stuff and digital collectibles give another tool to tear that down. That's why what I'm super bullish on in this space is Meta Label, who solve two real problems in the space. One, how do you package multimedia into a collection? And two, by fundamentally acknowledging that, creative things are made by groups of creative people. How can we organize ourselves as a group, and we're going to work on this zine or this album or whatever, and we're going to mechanically be paid for it forevermore. Like that. I'm bullish on things like that.
Love that answer. Given your background with LVMH, I'm curious, bullish or bearish digital fashion?
Again, related to the digital music conversation, I think that, I think that those boundaries come down. And I think if you look at, say, what DRAUP is doing, you can see them coming down already. You've got a generative artist, or an artist, actually a digital artist like Nicolas Sassoon, who's working and creating like fashion. And you can see Danny from DRAUP sort of like trying on the virtual fashion. So it appeals to an art collector. It also appeals, to someone who's in fashion. What I've been saying is anyone who is in the business of helping you define who you are as an individual has had an incredible 15 years. And I don't care if that's, Instagram or Korean makeup brands or tattoo artists or pronouns or PFPs. If you are in the business of helping people say, I'm a member of this tribe, I'm not a member of that tribe, like right away at LVMH, my aha moment was realizing that, a Louis Vuitton bag and a Slayer t-shirt serve the same purpose in culture. They both say, I'm a member of this tribe, not that one. So I think if that's what fashion means, then I think very, very, very bullish. Now, will it be in the form of I'm putting on, Nike shoes in a metaverse? I think that remains to be seen.
Sure. Bullish or bearish crypto regulation in the United States?
Ooh, I'm not even sure what bullish or bearish means in that context. I think that we will get crypto regulation. Pascal and I just walked the hill. We're not going to get anything anytime soon, which is fine. But we are definitely supporters, of things like there's a bill whose name I won't get right, but it's a bill that's about, recognizing self-custody as a right for Americans. Big supporters of that bill. I think stablecoin regulation makes sense. I think that, I think you have a de facto kind of government-backed stablecoin right now in Circle, which has its reserves in, well, until last past week, T-bills and BNY Mellon. But, obviously Jeremy is actively managing the reserves and, putting them in institutions which are too big to fail, which make them sort of a de facto, stablecoin. I don't think that the U.S. government will give, Circle a monopoly on that, forever. So I think that regulation will come in the stablecoin way. And I think that, there probably will be regulation, that does things like says that, if you're an exchange, you can't commingle funds, which are, kind of basic consumer protection. So I would like to see, self-custody as a right. And then I would love it if people, couldn't sell people columns in a spreadsheet and call it crypto. I mean, FTX was not crypto. So, I don't know if regulating so that someone can't do what FTX did is called crypto regulation, or if it's just called fraud regulation. But I think we'll definitely see something there.
Yeah. Finally, knowing that we're both collectors on the chain, bullish or bearish on Tezos?
I'm definitely bullish on Tezos. Am I bullish on Tezos, the asset? That's a different thing. I don't, but am I I'm bullish on collecting on Tezos? 1,000%. I think it's the right place for people to start simply because of how it feels, right? So I always say when you're buying on Ethereum and, paying $30 in gas, for $100 mint, like I did yesterday on Art Blocks, something feels kind of dirty about it. And like, would I pay $30 sales tax on that $100 item? I don't know that I would, like, but when I'm on Tezos and I'm spending $1 to support an artist that I love, it's really just about collecting the artist. And I think it's a great way for people to understand how collecting feels and to really separate yourself from the casino mentality and have a patron of the arts mentality. I still buy vinyl. I got 2 pieces of vinyl in the mail from Vinyl Me Please today. And when I'm buying vinyl on Bandcamp or at Vinyl Me Please, I'm not thinking about the resale value. I'm thinking about, collecting something that represents my ideals and supporting artists and showing my support of an artist with more than a fraction of a penny play. And, and ultimately, yeah, friends come over and, you get them out and you play them and look at them and enjoy them. So, yeah, I'm bullish on collecting overall.
There it is. Fully agree there. Well, look, Ian, great chatting with you. Really appreciate the time and look forward to what's to come on the Ledger front.
Thanks, man.
Well, that was a great conversation. I really appreciated Ian's candor in addressing areas where Ledger could have communicated better and could have anticipated the needs and concerns of its users better. I like that he didn't shy away from sharing lessons learned from the experience and exploring, the unique challenges that Web3's fast-paced, reactionary, always-on environment poses to brands and builders who are looking to make announcements or roll out new features. I think that there are a lot of insights to be gained from this episode for anyone who's looking to ship. And I also liked hearing his thoughts on the future of Web3 security, new token standards, and everything that's in the works at Ledger. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd encourage you to head to your podcast provider of choice and leave us a review. We love to read your feedback, we love the stars, and each positive review helps surface the work we're doing to a wider audience. Until next week, we will catch you again at the NFT Now podcast.